So let's now move to our question and answer. So please feel free. I will join here. And any question would be welcome. It is more interaction and brainstorming how we can take further steps to really go to that $400 billion.
Yeah, this is a question for Vasudevan. Specifically, you mentioned that you did the products for a customer. Was that branded as Wipro or that was for somebody else? And if it was for somebody else, have you all thought about branding some products in Wipro's name? Like Wipro used to do super genius computers in 1990s.
Okay. So I think from our group, overall from Wipro standpoint, our focus from market is more from a solution focus. And if you go back to the examples I talked about, all these are examples for global customers, right? And I think primarily from a market standpoint, the opportunity comes more from what kind of solution you are trying to solve. I mean, obviously, there is somebody who is carrying that in terms of a OEM branding that and taking to the market. But there is also a need in terms of a solution integration, which is where Wipro comes in. So there is the device part and the solution part. See, our play clearly is on the solution part and the device integration part. So we continue to focus on that. But all the products that I talked about, they are all products which are carried by the OEMs, but developed by Wipro. As I said, I think our focus will continue to remain more on a solution level. Now, once you say solution, it might be possible that sometimes when you give an integrated solution, there is some part of the component of the solution that will go. Now, whether you call it really a branding, for example, if you say the remote patient monitoring, maybe there is the sensor part that we have done a proof of concept, we will take it, right? So it is not a branding of that particular sub-component. It is part of a larger solution. So we will continue to focus on the solution aspect than talking about taking one single product like a laptop or mobile phone as a Wipro branded phone. So I don't think that's the focus that we are looking at.
So maybe I can just say that, Vasu, this is the aspiration of all people here. Companies like Wipro should start doing it, but nevertheless, understand. Please, sir, go ahead.
Okay, maybe I'll go in the meantime. This is a specific question, Dr. Singhal, and then general to everybody. The thing you mentioned about the gap between the engineers coming out of college and how they are practically useful to you in your profession. This is well known, many people discuss this. From the industry side, is there anything in the context of ESDM specifically, is anything being planned or anything being thought about to bridge this gap? People generally talk about, government spending money, government giving out grants to universities, but in terms of how the industry and the academia are shaking hands, technically, managerially, and also to some extent as an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Well, I'm not aware of any examples of how this is happening, but I think it is really got to be some people who are stepping up and saying that as industry we're willing to take the risk, we're willing to work with particular colleges, universities. I'm not aware of any examples of where this is actually taking place today, but how it has to be happened is people have to step up as industry and as colleges and say, we're willing to take the risk. I mean, I know that in Europe, all degrees are actually accredited by the Institute of Professionals. So the IEEE will accredit all electrical and electronic degrees in Europe. Similarly, the ICAME would do the same and the IMechE would do the same. So that is the way they deal with it there. Every degree has to go up for accreditation and only then is it accepted. So that's where the industry view comes in. We do have to find a way of doing that.
Maybe I can speak to this a little bit. So we also believe that this is a big gap and we are trying to take a few steps here. So a couple of things I can give as examples. One is being involved with some of the key universities in driving curriculum, right? So what we are proposing is industry advisory boards. Some universities already have them, but taking a little more active role in looking at the curriculum and driving it. Now it's not possible across all universities, but we are looking at a few, where we get our talent from. The second piece is more of a research collaboration, and that's still in the preliminary stages, but it's very common in the US where there's funds allocated in companies, large technology companies, to fund research proposals with universities. So what I'm trying to do personally is pull in some of the research activity that's going on, or at least encouraging, spawning, guiding some of the research activity in the universities through that central fund that companies like Cisco have. So these are some of the ways we can do it, but it's at a very, very kind of beginning stage. I think it's going to take a little while before it becomes institutionalized.
One other thing that we have done at Wipro was working with universities on, especially from building the systems, knowledge and experience. So we have built some development kits where in the labs, especially in deemed university, we have flexibility in terms of changing the curriculum. So we gave this development kits, make people understand the systems development, putting the hardware, software, even doing some portion of the FPGA work, and understand what it takes to build a complete system. So we roll that out to about 15 institutes so that the engineers' knowledge and expertise gets enhanced.
Yeah, I would agree with the overall sentiment as well. I mean, until recently, we've only really hired engineers with 5 years or more experience. We just haven't had the same sort of junior productivity that we were used to. But recently, now that the site's larger, we are starting to do our, our own training as we bring new grads into the system. And, we do have a new grad program now, but it's only been instituted very recently.
Maybe I can add sharing ST's experience there. First of all, I think we need to acknowledge, yes, this is a problem. Gap is there and we need to bridge. It's not solved, it's going to take also time to really solve it. So we also took one initiative where we have one professor as the consultant, and then through him we try to reach the academic university or institutes, and are also offering sabbatical for professors to spend maybe 6 months with us. I think we need to interact much more together, not just meeting in the conference rooms, but in day-to-day work. And that should be one way at least to start solving this complex problem. But I completely agree, unless we solve that, these big dreams are not going to be happening so easily. Thank you. So we go for next question, please. Yes.
This is Vikram Lave from PMC Sierra. My question is to Ishwar. You talked of the 7 criteria of success that you kind of listed out at the end of the when the project was done. How much was the overlap of these 7 versus what you thought were the criteria of success when you started the program? And then I have another question as well.
That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about any criteria for success when I started, right? I mean, it was just a single goal that has to succeed. That's it, So it was driven with that in mind. And as we navigated through the project, it was on a case-by-case basis. As problems came up, we sat together, brainstormed, figured out how to deal with it, and that's how it happened. It's in retrospect, after having done it, looking back, that these emerged as things that were essential to the success. But as we were doing it, some of these things were not as obvious. The ones I would mention is defining the right product was the one that really stuck out right from the beginning. I realized that the only way this can be successful is picking absolutely the right product from a market perspective, from a technology complexity perspective, from a Cisco context perspective. It had to have the right place in Cisco. If it was part of something that was a very core technology where we have thousands of experts across the company, there's no reason to do it here. It could be done anywhere, right? If it wasn't a market that wasn't very relevant, then again, it would have been a lab project, right? So it had to have relevance. And complexity was another thing, right? I realized that if we pick something that took 4 years, it wouldn't last, probably. Something would happen. There were enough challenges even in this one that in a larger project, something would have come up which would have probably ended the project. And it couldn't be small enough. I mean, it couldn't be too small. It couldn't be a Mickey Mouse project. It had to have technical chops. It had to have significant complexity. It had to advance the state of the art. So to me, that was one thing that was very clear in the beginning. The rest were learnings, and I navigated as those came up in the course of the project.
Thank you. I have a follow-on to that. Now that you have demonstrated this can be done out of India, is there a change in the perceptions of the corporate management as well, and where do you go from here?
Oh, there's a huge change. Absolutely. I mean, it's completely taken the site to a next level in a sense, right? As I mentioned, it was growing in scale, in numbers, but not really in terms of capability, respect, and how it was perceived in terms of what could be done. That certainly has changed, and as I mentioned, we have a full business unit located out of here with the VPGM here, with P&L responsibility. We even have a product marketing function in the US reporting into India. And there are several reasons for that. This is one of them, but there are other reasons also of the site evolving to this point. But certainly there's been a big change. So in sections, we are now we are hiring people in other parts of the world reporting into India. So it's kind of, the model is even changed in some business units.